Deep within the Pyrenees mountains, a secret has slept for 800 years. This is the story of the Cathar treasure, a legendary hoard of sacred gold and forbidden knowledge that vanished at the end of a brutal crusade. By the end, you will know the full, astonishing story of its disappearance and why people are still searching for it today. We will follow a desperate nighttime escape from a besieged fortress and track a mystery that has drawn in medieval knights, Nazi occultists, and modern adventurers. What is it about a lost treasure that captures our imagination so completely? Their story begins not with treasure, but with a radical idea that shook medieval Europe to its core. In the sun-drenched hills of Languedoc, a region in southern France known for its troubadours and courtly love, a different kind of faith took root. Its followers were called the Cathars, or sometimes the Albigensians. They believed in a stark division of the universe, a philosophy known as dualism. For them, there were two fundamental forces locked in an eternal struggle. One was the good God, the creator of all things spiritual and eternal, the realm of pure spirit. The other was an evil God, often associated with the figure from the Old Testament, who had crafted the physical world itself, a prison of matter, suffering, and decay. This belief made the entire material cosmos, including the human body, a creation of evil. Therefore, the Cathars rejected virtually everything the Catholic Church held sacred. They saw the Church's grand cathedrals as temples to the wrong God, built from corrupt stone. They dismissed its sacraments as empty rituals using physical objects like bread, wine, and water, which they considered irredeemably tainted. They had no need for priests, bishops, or the Pope, believing every person could connect directly with the divine spirit within. Their own spiritual leaders, known as the perfecti, lived lives of extreme austerity. They were vegetarian, pledged to absolute non-violence, and owned nothing, wandering the countryside to preach and offer a single sacrament called the consolamentum, a baptism of the spirit that freed the soul from the cycle of reincarnation in the material world. To the ordinary people of Languedoc, weary of a wealthy and often corrupt church, this message was powerfully attractive. It offered purity, direct connection, and a simple, ethical life. The region's local nobles, valuing their independence from the northern French king and the Pope, often protected the Cathars, allowing their communities to flourish. But to the Vatican in Rome, this was not just a heresy, it was an existential threat. The Cathar faith undermined the very foundation of the Church's authority, its control over salvation, and its immense material wealth. By the dawn of the 13th century, the stage was set. The tolerant, vibrant land of Languedoc was about to become the target of the first crusade ever launched by Christians against other Christians. It would be a war not for a city like Jerusalem, but for the very souls of a population, and it would be prosecuted with a brutality that would forge the legend of a hidden treasure. This radical challenge could not go unanswered. In 1209, Pope Innocent III issued a call that would forever scar the landscape of France. He offered the knights of Northern Europe a tantalizing prize, the same spiritual rewards granted to those who fought for Jerusalem, but with a far more tangible target, the rich, independent lands of Languedoc. This was the Albigensian Crusade, and its opening act was a horror that would echo through history. The Crusader army, a mix of northern barons and opportunistic soldiers of fortune, descended on the city of Béziers. The city was a stronghold, home to both loyal Catholics and Cathar heretics. When the defenders refused to hand over the small number of Cathars within their walls, the Crusaders stormed the city. What followed was not a battle, but a slaughter. Thousands of men, women, and children were cut down in the streets, seeking refuge in the great church of St. Mary Magdalene, only to be burned alive when the building was set on fire. The chroniclers record the chilling words of the papal legate, Arnaud Amalric, when asked how the soldiers should distinguish heretic from faithful. His reply was simple and monstrous: kill them all. God will know his own. The message was brutally clear. Tolerance itself was now a crime, but beneath the religious fervor lay a raw political hunger. The northern French nobility, led by figures like Simon de Montfort, saw a golden opportunity. This crusade was a perfect pretext to crush the powerful and culturally distinct southern lords, to seize their lands, their wealth, and their autonomy, and to bring the entire region under the crown of France. What followed was not a swift campaign, but a grinding, decades-long war of extermination. Castles were besieged, towns were put to the torch, and entire populations were given a grim choice: convert or die. The vibrant culture of the troubadours was silenced by the clash of steel and the crackle of funeral pyres. The land of tolerance became a land of ash and fear. Yet, even as the Crusaders tightened their grip, the heart of the Cathar faith refused to be extinguished. Its last defenders retreated to a network of remote mountain fortresses, citadels perched on dizzying peaks where they would make their final, legendary stand. And it is here, in these last bastions, that the mystery of the treasure truly begins. High on a jagged limestone peak in the Pyrenees, the fortress of Massacre became a beacon of desperate hope. By 1243, it was the last true sanctuary, a stone eagle's nest housing over 400 souls, a mix of Cathar perfecti, knights and their families. For 10 months, a royal army of thousands laid siege to this seemingly impregnable rock. They camped in the valley below, staring up at walls that blended with the cliffs themselves, a fortress that could only be approached by a single, treacherous path. The defenders held out through a brutal winter, supplied by secret mountain trails and an unbreakable faith, but the noose was tightening. By March of 1244, the Crusaders managed to haul catapults up a neighboring summit, raining fire and stone onto the fortress's wooden structures. The end was becoming inevitable, yet it is in these final, fraught weeks that the historical record grows hazy and the legend truly ignites. Chronicles agree that a surrender was negotiated, but the terms were strangely lenient. The attacking lords offered a 15-day truce. After that period, the fortress would surrender, and those inside would face judgment. But here lies the first great puzzle. Why would a victorious army, after a 10-month siege, grant their defeated enemies a 2-week reprieve? What possible reason could there be for such a delay, unless the defenders needed time for something they could not accomplish under the watchful eyes of their conquerors? The stories that have echoed down the centuries insist this was no act of mercy. It was a transaction. The Cathars, it is said, used those precious 15 days not to pray for salvation, but to secure their most sacred legacy. Under the cover of night, in the deepest shadows of the mountain, small groups of trusted individuals are believed to have slipped past the Crusader lines. They carried with them not personal wealth, but the very heart of their faith, a treasure far greater than gold, the secret knowledge and sacred texts that defined their belief. They vanished into the labyrinth of caves and forests, leaving the fortress to its fate. When the truce ended, over 200 perfecti and believers who refused to renounce their faith walked calmly from the gates of Massacre. They were led to a large pyre built in the field below, a place still known today as the Field of the Burned. They chose the flames rather than betray their truth. But as that terrible smoke rose into the spring sky, a question was born, one that would outlast the stones of the fortress itself. If the treasure of their wisdom was saved, where did it go and who became its guardian? The legend begins with a single, breathless escape. In the dark winter months before the final surrender of Massacre, a handful of the perfecti, the spiritual elite of the Cathar faith, performed a seemingly impossible feat. They vanished from the besieged fortress. Medieval chronicles and later folklore agree on this core event. A small group slipping past the ring of Crusader camps, descending the treacherous cliffs under a moonless sky. But what they carried with them is the source of the enduring mystery, an object of obsession for centuries. This was not a single chest of coins, but a concept divided into two profound parts, each more compelling than the last. First, there was the material treasure, the one that fills storybooks, a hoard of gold and silver, perhaps sacred chalices or liturgical objects saved from their ravaged churches. This was the tangible wealth of a persecuted community, their collective fortune hidden away to prevent it from funding their own destruction. Yet, it is the second part of the treasure that truly fuels the legend, the spiritual treasure. This was said to be the sacred heart of the Cathar belief itself, possibly forbidden texts containing their secret doctrines, or even powerful relics that embodied their connection to a purer, older Christianity. Think of it not as a book, but as a key, a form of knowledge so dangerous it could unravel the theological foundations of the medieval church. If such a thing existed and fell into the wrong hands, or even the right ones, it could change everything. So these fleeing parfaits, these paratroopers of faith, were burdened with an unimaginable responsibility to safeguard both the physical wealth of their people and the very soul of their creed. Their successful escape created a vacuum of possibility, a blank space on the map where an entire world of secrets could be waiting. And from that moment, the treasure ceased to be a historical event and became a ghost, a story that would shape the actions of kings, scholars, and fanatics for the next 700 years. But what exactly was this spiritual treasure they risked everything to protect? The theories are as varied as they are fascinating, each painting a different picture of a lost truth. Some believe the Cathars guarded the original, unadulterated teachings of Jesus, a message of pure love and personal divinity that bypassed the need for any church or priest entirely. This was a Christianity stripped of ritual and power, a direct line to the divine that the Roman Church could not tolerate. Others take a more symbolic leap, proposing the treasure was the Holy Grail itself. Not necessarily a physical cup, but the concept of it, the secret of eternal life or divine knowledge. In this version, the Grail was not a golden chalice, but the living lineage of the Cathar faith, the true church in exile. Then there are the more concrete, yet equally mysterious possibilities. Could it have been ancient Gnostic texts, scrolls of forbidden wisdom predating the Bible as we know it, hidden away since the fall of the Roman Empire? Or perhaps it was something startlingly literal, like documents proving a sacred bloodline, a historical truth so explosive it threatened the foundations of European royalty and the papacy. This intangible treasure, this idea of a hidden knowledge, is the engine that drives the modern mystery. It creates a powerful link, a secret thread connecting the Cathars to other legendary guardians of esoteric truth, most notably the Knights Templar. Both were orders destroyed by the Church and the French crown. Both were rumored to possess profound secrets and immense wealth. Could the fleeing Cathars have passed their sacred charge to the Templars, a military order with the means to protect it? This connection later fuels 20th century tales, like the infamous mystery of Rennes-le-Château, where a poor priest suddenly became rich, sparking rumors he had found a hidden Cathar or Templar secret. In the end, the power of the spiritual treasure lies in its ambiguity. It is a blank canvas. For believers, it represents the ultimate truth waiting to be found. For historians, it is a compelling metaphor for a lost culture. And for treasure hunters, it is the ultimate prize, because a secret that can rewrite history is always worth more than gold. Yet the treasure is not only a ghost of ideas, it is also a very real weight of gold and silver. Alongside the spiritual secrets, there existed a material hoard, the accumulated wealth of an entire community. For decades, the Cathars were protected and supported by powerful nobles and a sympathetic populace across Languedoc. This was not a poor movement. Wealthy converts donated their lands and fortunes. Followers gave what they could to support the itinerant perfecti. Over generations, this created a substantial common treasury, a war chest for a faith that knew conflict was inevitable. So what might this physical treasure have contained? Historians suggest it likely held coinage from across Europe, gold and silver plate from the chapels of sympathetic lords, and perhaps jewels given as pious offerings. But the legends reach for something far more spectacular. Some tales whisper that this hoard included sacred objects rescued from the very heart of Christendom, relics so potent they were smuggled out of Jerusalem centuries earlier. Could the Cathars have been the final guardians of the lost temple treasure from Jerusalem, the fabled wealth of King Solomon plundered by Rome and then lost to history? This connection weaves the Cathars into an even grander tapestry of ancient mysteries. Specific artifacts are often named in these stories, like the legendary Emerald Tablet, said to contain the secrets of alchemy itself, or the magnificent seven-branched candlestick, the great menorah from the Second Temple. In the context of the medieval world, such objects were beyond priceless. They were divine symbols of authority. To possess them was to hold a tangible piece of holy history, a direct link to a sacred past that could legitimize any faith or crown. For a persecuted group like the Cathars, protecting such items would be about more than wealth. It would be about preserving a rival claim to spiritual truth, a physical challenge to the relics housed in the great cathedrals of their enemies. So imagine the burden of those fleeing Massacre if the legends hold true. They were not just carrying bags of coin, they were carrying the weight of history itself, objects whose very existence could rewrite the story of how the world understood holiness and power. This dual nature of the treasure, both spiritual and material, is what makes the hunt so endlessly compelling, because you are searching for two different prizes, and either one would be a discovery that shatters our understanding of the past. The mountain itself holds the first clues to their flight. Massacre is not just a castle on a hill, it is a geological fortress surrounded on three sides by near vertical cliffs known locally as the Park. For the desperate Cathars, the very terrain that made their sanctuary defensible also offered a potential, if terrifying, path to freedom. The most dramatic theory suggests a small group of the perfectly used ropes or hidden, ancient paths to descend this sheer rock face under the cover of darkness. It was a climb that would challenge a modern mountaineer with proper equipment, let alone medieval monks in simple robes carrying a sacred burden. Yet, it is precisely the kind of audacious, near impossible feat that legends are built upon. Success would have required more than just courage. It would have demanded intimate, secret knowledge of the mountain, knowledge perhaps passed down through generations of local guides who knew every crevice and goat trail. This leads to the second crucial element of the escape, the network of sympathizers. The Cathars were not alone. Throughout the surrounding valleys and villages, a silent resistance operated, ordinary people who shared their faith or simply despised the northern invaders. These hidden allies could have provided safe passage, food, and fresh guides, creating a clandestine highway through the occupied territory. The fleeing Parfaits likely did not travel as a conspicuous group, but splintered into smaller, less noticeable parties, each carrying a portion of the treasure, whether material or spiritual, to ensure its survival. So where did these ghostly processions go? The most persistent theories point the way deeper into the heart of the Pyrenees, towards a wild, labyrinthine region known as the Sabbaths. This area is a natural fortress within a fortress, a tangled world of deep caves, hidden valleys, and dense forests. For centuries, it had served as a refuge for the Cathars, earning the nickname the Land of the Pure. Specific caves, like the vast cavern system of Lombrives, are traditionally named as hiding places, natural cathedrals where the faith could be practiced in secret. Other whispers suggest the escape route turned south, crossing the high, snow-dusted passes into the kingdoms of Spain. There, in Aragon or Catalonia, the fugitives might have found distant cousins in faith or simply the anonymity of a foreign land. Each possible route paints a different ending to the story. Did the treasure find a permanent home in a silent, sunless cave, waiting for a day of return that never came? Or was it smuggled across borders, entering a new stream of history far from its origins? The geography of the escape transforms the treasure from a static object into a moving target, its final location defined by the choices made in those few desperate nights. This turns the entire Pyrenees mountain range into a vast, open-ended puzzle, where every remote valley and dark cavern becomes a potential chapter in a story we have only just begun to read. But the shadow of massacre falls on another, even more famous order of knights. As the Cathar world crumbled, another powerful group watched from their commanderies across the Languedoc, the Knights Templar. This military order of warrior monks, answerable only to the Pope, was at the peak of its power and wealth. They were the bankers of kings and the guardians of pilgrims, and they had a significant presence throughout the very lands being torn apart by the Crusade. Their proximity alone sparks the first question: were the Templars merely observers, or did they have a stake in the fate of the pure ones? Historians note a curious lack of evidence. The Templars, famed for their martial prowess, were conspicuously absent from the front lines of the Albigensian Crusade. They did not join the siege of massacre. This silence is deafening, for an order sworn to defend Christendom to stand aside while a papal crusade raged in their own backyard suggests either profound disagreement with the campaign or, as some theorists propose, a hidden sympathy for the Cathars. Both groups shared a deep piety and a certain distance from mainstream church authority. Both were ultimately destroyed by the combined might of the French crown and the papacy. This parallel fate creates a powerful narrative echo, making it tempting to see a secret alliance. The most compelling theory suggests the Templars did not fight because they were busy with a different mission, a clandestine operation to aid the escape. With their network of fortified houses and their rites of passage across borders, the Templars possessed the perfect infrastructure to move people and goods in secret. Could a small, trusted cell within the order have provided the ultimate safe passage for the Cathar treasure, spiriting it away to a pre-arranged hiding place within one of their own vast, secure temples? The timeline adds a haunting layer to this idea. The Cathar stronghold fell in 1244. The Templars were violently suppressed by King Philip IV of France in 1307, over 60 years later. That is more than half a century. If the Cathar treasure, both material and spiritual, did come into Templar hands, it would have had decades to be integrated, hidden, or transformed. It could have swelled their legendary coffers, explaining some of the immense wealth that so tempted the French king. More tantalizingly, their rumored secret knowledge, the heterodox beliefs they were accused of during their trials, could have been influenced by the spiritual doctrines they safeguarded. This connection transforms the treasure hunt into a double mystery. You are no longer searching for a single lost hoard, but for a legacy that may have been absorbed into one of history's greatest conspiracies. The treasure of the pure ones becomes a ghost within the ghost of the Templar fortune, a secret within a secret, lost when the last Grand Master was burned at the stake. This theory does more than link two historical tragedies. It suggests the treasure did not vanish into a cave, but into the very bloodstream of medieval power, only to be violently purged. And if that is true, then its traces could be anywhere the Templars once walked, from the rocky coasts of Scotland to the ancient temples of Jerusalem, waiting for someone to connect the dots between two of history's most enduring enigmas. 2 centuries after the Templars fell, a new mystery bloomed in the same haunted landscape. In the tiny, windswept village of Rennes-le-Château, a poor country priest named Béranger Saunière began a series of renovations to his dilapidated church in the late 1800s. According to the story, while restoring the altar, he discovered something astonishing sealed within one of the ancient pillars, a set of old parchments. These were not ordinary documents. They were said to be coded genealogies, cryptic maps, or perhaps even medieval texts pointing to a profound secret. What happened next fueled a legend that would captivate the 20th century. The priest, previously living in near poverty, suddenly possessed seemingly limitless wealth. He built a lavish villa, a library tower, and ornate gardens, spending the modern equivalent of millions. He hosted extravagant parties for Parisian elites, all while remaining a simple parish priest in a remote village. Where did the money come from? Officially, he claimed it was from donations for masses he said for wealthy patrons, but the scale of his spending made that story ring hollow. The rumor took root that he had not found mere parchments but a tangible treasure, and that those documents were the key to locating it. This is where the threads of history begin to intertwine. Rennes-le-Château lies in the heart of the old Cathar country, a short journey from the ruins of Massacre. Local folklore had long whispered that the treasure of the Pure Ones was hidden somewhere in the region's labyrinth of caves and mountains. Could Father Saunière have stumbled upon a direct clue to its final resting place? Perhaps his parchments were not Templar secrets, but a last testament from a Cathar perfecti, a dying message describing a hidden vault. Maybe he found a portion of the material hoard itself, a single cache that funded his bizarre transformation. This theory gained explosive popularity in the 1980s with the publication of The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, a book that wove the Rennes mystery into a grand tapestry involving the Merovingian bloodline, secret societies, and the idea that Jesus Christ had descendants. The book suggested Saunière's find was not gold but proof of this heretical lineage, a secret protected for centuries by groups like the Cathars and Templars. While widely debunked by historians, the book's influence was monumental. It directly inspired Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code, which brought a version of this conspiracy to a global audience of millions. In this modern retelling, the Cathar treasure was no longer just gold or Gnostic texts. It was living proof, a historical bombshell that could topple institutions. The quiet escape from Massacre had, centuries later, erupted into a worldwide cultural phenomenon. The mystery of Rennes-le-Château did something crucial. It revived the Cathar legend for the modern age, transforming it from a local folktale into a central piece of a vast alternative history. It asked a compelling question: what if the treasure was never truly lost, but only waiting for the right person, in the right forgotten church, to uncover a clue that would rewrite everything we thought we knew? The modern search for the Cathar treasure would take a dark and unexpected turn in the 1930s, with the arrival of a man who saw not just a historical mystery, but a racial prophecy. His name was Otto Rahn, a German writer and amateur archaeologist utterly captivated by the story of Massacre. For Rahn, the Cathars were not medieval heretics, they were noble, sun-worshipping heroes, the last pure guardians of a sacred European legacy. He traveled repeatedly to the Pyrenees, hiking to the ruins of the fortress, exploring the same caves whispered about in local legend. He was not looking for gold coins, he was on a quest for the ultimate prize, convinced the Cathars had been the protectors of the Holy Grail itself. In 1933, he published a book titled Crusade Against the Grail, a romantic and deeply ideological retelling of the Albigensian Crusade. In his version, the Cathars were the true heroes, and their treasure was the sacred cup of Christ, a symbol of pure Aryan spirituality that the corrupt church sought to destroy. Rahn's work was a peculiar blend of genuine passion, poetic license, and the rising racial theories of his time, and it found its most dangerous reader. Heinrich Himmler, the head of the dreaded SS, was a fanatical believer in occult history. He was obsessed with proving the superiority of the Aryan race through ancient artifacts and mythical origins. To Himmler, Rahn's book was not a work of speculation, it was a blueprint. If the Cathars were a pure Nordic people, as Rahn suggested, and if they had guarded the Grail, then that relic rightfully belonged to the New Germany. The Grail, in this twisted ideology, was not a Christian symbol of divine grace, but a pagan trophy of racial power. Himmler promptly recruited Rahn into the SS, giving him a uniform, a rank, and official backing to continue his search. Now the quiet scholar was a state-sponsored treasure hunter, his expeditions funded by one of the most brutal regimes in history. He returned to the Pyrenees with new resources, digging and probing under the swastika banner, seeking a holy object to legitimize a nightmare. This chapter is profoundly unsettling because it shows how easily a beautiful, tragic legend can be corrupted. The Cathars, who died for their belief in peace and purity, were now being claimed as spiritual ancestors by the architects of genocide. Their mountain refuge became a target for men who believed in a purity of blood, not spirit. Otto Ron's personal story ends as mysteriously as the treasure he sought. By 1939, disillusioned or perhaps fearful, he was dead, officially a suicide in the snow of the Austrian Alps. His quest, however, left a permanent stain on the legend. It proved that the treasure of the Pure Ones was not a harmless fairy tale, but a story powerful enough to attract the attention of monsters, a myth that could be weaponized to serve the darkest of political dreams. The shadow of Otto Ron still lingers in the Pyrenees, but today's seekers are driven by a different kind of obsession. The modern hunt for the Cathar treasure is a mosaic of motives, from pure historical curiosity to the undeniable thrill of the chase. Every summer, the rugged landscape around Montségur hums with activity, not from medieval armies, but from individuals armed with high-tech gear and centuries-old maps. These are the contemporary treasure hunters, a diverse tribe ranging from solo enthusiasts with metal detectors to teams backed by private funding and satellite imagery. They do not seek to validate an ideology, but to solve a puzzle, to touch a piece of a story that has captivated them from afar. Their efforts are focused on a few key locations whispered about in the legends. The vast cavern system of Lombrives, often called the Cathedral of the Cathars, is a prime target. Explorers have combed its immense chambers and narrow tunnels, searching for any sign of a hidden chamber or a long-forgotten stash. The mysterious Blanchefort Mountain, with its network of man-made tunnels and strange carved symbols, draws others who believe it was a secret Templar stronghold, a perfect final vault. And of course, the ruins of Montségur itself remain ground zero. Every stone, every crevice on the mountain's flanks has been scrutinized, with some hunters using ground-penetrating radar in the hope of finding a concealed crypt or a sealed passage that medieval defenders might have used. Yet this passionate search exists in a constant tension with preservation. The legal and ethical issues are profound. In France, all archaeological finds belong to the state, and unauthorized digging on a classified historical site like Montségur is a serious crime. Beyond the law, there is a deeper question of respect. Is it right to tear into these sacred grounds, these grave sites, in pursuit of gold or glory? Responsible researchers work in partnership with historians and archaeologists, understanding that context is everything. A coin found in situ can tell a story, while that same coin ripped from the earth by a shovel is just a trinket. The field is littered with tantalizing anecdotes and frustrating dead ends. There are stories of hunters finding strange, coded markings on rocks or small caches of medieval coins that hint at a larger hoard just out of reach. One persistent tale tells of a local man who, in the 1950s, discovered a sealed cavity in a cave wall containing a skeleton and a handful of silver pieces, only to have the location lost after his sudden death. Another speaks of a team in the 1980s who used sonar in a mountain lake, getting a massive return signal that suggested a large metallic object, but they were never granted permission to dive. Each of these stories, whether verified or not, adds another layer of fog to the mystery. They prove that people are looking and sometimes finding something, but never quite the grand prize. This cycle of hope and frustration is what keeps the legend alive. It transforms the treasure from a historical artifact into a living, breathing quest, a game that is still being played on the slopes of the Pyrenees, where every hike could be the one that finally changes history. The whispers of the treasure did not die in the flames of Montségur. They simply went underground, carried on the breath of storytellers for generations. In the quiet villages of the Ord and Ariege, the modern departments that cradle the old Cathar heartland, the legend found a second life, not in libraries, but in the oral traditions of the people who never left. Here, history is not a series of dates, it is a living presence in the landscape. Local folklore became the keeper of the flame, a fragile, human chain of memory stretching from the 13th century to the present day. The stories take many shapes, each more evocative than the last. There are tales of ghostly parfaits, the Cathar perfecti, seen as spectral sentinels guarding the entrances to certain caves, their forms shimmering in the moonlight as a warning or a promise to those who approach. These are not horror stories, but stories of sacred duty, suggesting that the spiritual guardians of the treasure never truly rested. Then there are the more tangible accounts, often attributed to a grandfather or a distant uncle, of shepherds who, after a sudden rainstorm, would find a few strange, worn coins winking from the mud of a hillside, coins that did not match any local currency. These finds were never a hoard, just tantalizing fragments, as if the mountain itself was occasionally shedding a single scale from a sleeping dragon buried deep within. Most intriguing are the persistent rumors of certain old families, their names known only in hushed tones locally, who are said to possess a secret, a piece of knowledge passed from father to eldest son, a clue to a location or a coded message whose meaning has been lost over time. This folklore performs a fascinating double duty. On one hand, it preserves a kernel of historical truth, a communal memory of a great loss and a great secret. The stories of hidden caves and found coins almost certainly have a basis in real events, perhaps refugees hiding in the grottos or the scattered personal wealth of fleeing families. They keep the cultural identity of the Cathar resistance alive, transforming historical victims into mythic guardians. On the other hand, this oral tradition is a master of distortion. With each retelling, details shift, locations blur, and motives simplify. A cave that once hid a family for a week becomes, over centuries, the legendary vault of the Grail. A found coin from a later medieval period gets folded back into the story of the great treasure. The folklore creates a palimpsest, a document written over many times, where it becomes impossible to separate the original historical text from the layers of mythic elaboration. For the historian, this is a nightmare, turning every local account into a puzzle where truth and fiction are inseparably fused. But for the mystery itself, this process is the source of its endless richness. The folklore does not provide a map, it provides a mood. It saturates the landscape with meaning, turning every odd rock formation, every dark cave mouth into a potential clue. It tells us that the people who have lived closest to this history for 800 years never believed the story was over. They felt the presence of the secret in their bones, and in sharing these stories, they ensured that the treasure of the pure ones would never be just a footnote in a chronicle, but a living question waiting in the mountains for an answer. Archaeology offers a grounding counterpoint to the swirling legends. Excavations at the very heart of the mystery, the mountain fortress of Montségur, have revealed a story of grim perseverance, not glittering gold. Teams have meticulously sifted through the ruins for decades, uncovering the tangible remnants of a community under siege. They have found the foundations of dwellings, simple hearths where meals were cooked, and a sobering number of arrowheads and crossbow bolts, both outside and inside the walls, telling a silent tale of the relentless assault. They have uncovered everyday items like pottery shards, belt buckles, and the bones of butchered animals, painting a picture of a harsh, confined life during those final months. These finds are invaluable to historians, offering a clear window into the reality of the Cathars' last stand. But conspicuously absent is any evidence of a treasure chamber, a hidden vault, or even a single coin hoard that would hint at the legendary wealth. The same pattern holds true across other Cathar strongholds, the castra or fortified villages that dot the landscape. Digs at places like Queribus or Peripatus have illuminated their sophisticated defensive architecture and the daily rhythms of their inhabitants. We find mills, ovens, and cisterns, the infrastructure of a life determined to continue under threat. Small personal artifacts emerge like Cathar coins, simple jewelry, and distinctive pottery known as graffita, often incised with crosses or symbols. These objects are deeply meaningful, connecting us to individual lives and a shared culture, but they are not treasure in the storybook sense. They are the scattered pieces of a shattered world, not a consolidated fortune. This archaeological record presents us with a fascinating paradox. It confirms the historical reality of the Cathar community, their presence in these mountain refuges, and the violence that ended their world. Yet, it provides no material proof for their most famous story. The absence of evidence is not, of course, evidence of absence. A well-hidden treasure, by its very definition, would not be lying around for archaeologists to easily find centuries later. But the sobering work of the trowel and brush does force us to ask a crucial question. If the treasure was a physical hoard of gold and sacred objects, would some trace not have surfaced by now, either in these controlled excavations or in the countless unofficial digs that have scarred the region? The earth has given up the bones of the defenders and the tools of their daily struggle, but it has kept the legendary prize, if it exists at all, locked in a deeper silence. Perhaps the greatest challenge to the treasure legend is a simple, sobering possibility. What if there was no chest to find, no secret vault waiting in the mountains? Some historians propose a far more practical and poignant interpretation of those 15 days of truce at Massacre. The true treasure, they argue, was not an object but the people. The primary goal of the besieged community would have been the safe evacuation of their spiritual leaders, the perfecti themselves. These men and women were the living libraries of the Cathar faith, the only ones who could perform the consolamentum and keep their doctrine alive. Saving them was saving the treasure. Any material wealth that remained within the fortress likely had a much less romantic fate. It may have been used up during the long siege to pay for supplies smuggled in along those secret trails. Coins would have been spent, silver plate melted down for currency, anything of value bartered away to sustain the community until the very last moment. After the surrender, the victorious Crusaders would have conducted a thorough inventory of the fortress, confiscating any remaining goods of worth as rightful spoils of war. The idea of a massive, untouched hoard slipping through their fingers under such a tight siege stretches credulity. This theory of dispersal turns the legend on its head. Instead of a single mythical cache, the treasure of the Cathars bled away gradually, coin by coin, to feed a resistance, and whatever was left was simply taken, catalogued, and absorbed into the economy of their conquerors. It becomes a story not of preservation, but of consumption and loss. An even more radical school of thought suggests the entire treasure narrative is a beautiful fiction, a romantic invention that grew like moss over the stones of history in the centuries after the Crusade. In this view, the story served a powerful psychological purpose. For the defeated and scattered Cathar communities, the tale of a hidden legacy offered a thread of hope, a symbolic promise that their truth was not eradicated but merely sleeping. For later generations, especially the Romantic writers of the 19th century who rediscovered the tragedy of the Albigensians, the treasure added a necessary layer of mystery and nobility to a historical event that was, at its core, a brutal act of genocide. A story about persecuted monks escaping with a sacred secret is far more compelling than a story about a community being systematically starved and burned out of existence. So we are left weighing two very different possibilities. On one hand, the enduring legend of a single, intact hoard, a story that has motivated searchers for centuries. On the other, the quieter, more historical likelihood of gradual dispersal, where the treasure was its people, its faith, and whatever coins were spent to keep both alive a little longer. This does not make the mystery any less powerful. It simply asks us to consider what we mean by treasure in the first place. Is it the glitter of gold in a dark cave, or is it the unbroken line of an idea passed from one guardian to the next long after the last fortress fell? The answer you find depends entirely on what you are truly hoping to discover. The Pyrenees are not merely mountains, they are a fortress of stone and shadow. To understand why the Cathar treasure could vanish so completely, you must first see the land itself as the ultimate guardian. This is a landscape carved by time into a labyrinth, a natural vault with 1,000 hidden doors. The region of Languedoc, where the foothills rise into the jagged peaks of the Pyrenees, is a world of deep gorges, thick, almost impenetrable forests, and high, lonely plateaus. It feels remote even today, a place where the modern world seems to fade at the edge of a dirt road. But the true secrets lie beneath your feet. This limestone bedrock is Swiss cheese, riddled with an endless network of caves, sinkholes, and subterranean rivers. Water has spent millennia dissolving the rock, creating vast, hidden chambers connected by narrow, twisting passages known only to local shepherds and the occasional adventurous caver. The most famous of these is the Lombre's cave system, a sprawling underground universe so immense it earned the nickname the Cathedral of the Cathars. Step inside and you are swallowed by a silence so profound it feels like a physical presence. Stalactites hang like stone icicles from ceilings high above, and chambers open up large enough to hold a village. In such a place, a single chest or a library of scrolls could be hidden in a side passage and never be found again, lost in the eternal dark. Above ground, the terrain is just as deceptive. What looks like a solid wall of rock often conceals a narrow defile, a secret pass used for centuries by smugglers and shepherds to move unseen. These are not roads but forgotten threads in the landscape, known only through oral tradition. A fleeing group could disappear into one of these clefts and emerge miles away in a completely different valley, leaving no trace for pursuers staring at an unbroken mountain face. This geography does not just allow for a hiding place, it suggests a million of them. Every moss-covered boulder could conceal a crevice. Every silent forest glen might sit atop a cavern entrance now sealed by rockfall. The land itself becomes a character in the mystery, actively protecting its secrets. It fuels the legend because it offers a perfect, logical answer to the question of where the treasure went. It went into the earth. It tells every hunter that the prize is not just hidden, but that the very ground beneath their boots is a map they cannot read, a puzzle box made of stone and time, waiting for the right key to turn in a lock no one has yet seen. Perhaps the treasure's true power lies not in what was hidden, but in who was hiding it. The Cathars captivate us because they represent the ultimate underdog, a small group of peaceful believers who dared to challenge the most powerful institution of their age. Their story is a perfect storm of human drama, a narrative of principled defiance against overwhelming force. We see in them the timeless appeal of the rebel, the martyr, and the seeker of truth. They were victims of a horrific persecution, branded heretics, and hunted down for a faith that preached non-violence and personal purity, a tragic irony that resonates deeply in any era that values conscience over conformity. This makes their lost treasure more than gold. It becomes a symbol of everything that was brutally suppressed, a pristine knowledge that the establishment could not tolerate. We are drawn to stories of burned libraries and silenced voices, to the romantic ideal of a purer, simpler faith that existed before dogma and politics corrupted it. The Cathars fit this archetype perfectly, a gentle light snuffed out by the machinery of crusade, leaving behind only a haunting question of what wisdom died with them. This enduring appeal has ensured their story never faded into the dry pages of history. Instead, it has been continually reborn in our modern mythology. They appear as mysterious keepers of secrets in best-selling novels, from the historical thrillers of Kate Moss to the conspiracy-laden plots that dominate airport bookstores. Films and television series paint them as tragic heroes, their white-robed perfecti standing stoically against the coming darkness. Even in the interactive world of video games, players explore digitally recreated ruins of Massacre, solving puzzles to uncover their hidden lore, literally stepping into the shoes of a treasure hunter. Each retelling, whether faithful or fanciful, reinforces the core elements that make the legend stick: the noble struggle, the hidden truth, and the promise that something of immense value escaped the flames. This cultural recycling does something remarkable. It keeps the Cathars alive as a contemporary idea. We are not remembering a dead medieval sect, we are participating in a living mystery. Their story taps into a universal human longing, the desire to believe that truth cannot be fully eradicated, that somewhere a spark from that pure fire still glows in the dark, waiting to be found. It is this spiritual legacy, this ghost of an idea, that is the most compelling treasure of all, because it is one we all, in some way, are still searching for. The very stones of Massacre now support an economy of wonder. Each year, thousands of visitors make the steep pilgrimage up the mountain path, not in search of a physical chest, but to breathe the air of the legend itself. The village below thrives on this steady stream of curiosity, offering hotels, restaurants, and souvenir shops filled with books, maps, and replicas of the Cathar cross. A similar transformation happened in Rennes-le-Château, where the mysterious wealth of a priest turned a sleepy hamlet into a bustling tourist destination, complete with museum tours and themed walks. The story of the lost treasure has become a powerful commercial engine, fueling a vibrant industry of novels, television specials, paid lectures, and expertly guided historical tours through the Pyrenees. This attention brings undeniable benefits, funding local preservation efforts and keeping a fascinating chapter of history alive in the public imagination. But this commercial spotlight also casts a long, distorting shadow. When a mystery becomes a marketable product, the incentive shifts subtly from uncovering truth to sustaining intrigue. The most sensational claims, the most explosive conspiracy theories, often generate the most clicks, book sales, and ticket purchases. This can create a feedback loop where historical research is pressured to conform to the demands of a compelling narrative, where ambiguous artifacts are presented as definitive proof, and where complex, tragic history is simplified into a treasure hunt. The line between respectful exploration and outright exploitation grows thin. Consider the impact on the sites themselves. The relentless foot traffic, the unauthorized digs by overzealous hunters, the constant churn of speculation can all damage the very heritage people come to admire. More subtly, the focus on a hidden hoard can overshadow the profound human story of the Cathars, reducing their spiritual struggle and horrific persecution to a mere backdrop for an adventure plot. So we must ask ourselves, as lovers of this mystery, what are we truly consuming? Are we engaging with a historical tragedy and its unresolved questions, or are we purchasing a packaged fantasy? A comfortable escape where answers are always just one more clue away. The treasure's greatest modern alchemy may not be turning lead into gold, but turning genuine historical mystery into a sustainable and sometimes superficial commodity. This commercial reality doesn't invalidate the search, but it asks us to approach every new claim, every discovered map with a mindful question. Are we being shown a piece of the puzzle, or simply sold another piece of the myth? A different kind of evidence lies carved in stone. Scattered across the landscape of the mystery are strange symbols and cryptic messages, a silent language left behind for those who know how to read it. These are not maps with a clear X marking the spot, but riddles etched into the very fabric of the region, promising a revelation that always seems just out of reach. Perhaps the most famous of these puzzles are the enigmatic engravings found at the Château de Blanchefort, a ruined fortress perched on a lonely hilltop. Here on weathered stone, you can find a collection of odd markings, geometric shapes, and what appear to be coded letters. Some look like alchemical symbols, others like distorted crosses or astrological signs. To the casual observer, they might be the idle scratches of a bored medieval mason. but to the treasure hunter they are a tantalizing cipher, a potential set of instructions pointing toward a hidden vault. The problem is, without a key, the code is unbreakable. Every researcher who has studied them seems to arrive at a different translation, some seeing directions to a nearby cave, others interpreting them as a complex date or a mystical formula. This ambiguity is the hallmark of the entire puzzle. The clues are clear enough to suggest a profound secret, but vague enough to support 1,000 different theories. They act like a mirror, reflecting back the hopes and obsessions of the person trying to solve them. Then, of course, there is the epicenter of modern cryptic lore, the church at Rennes-le-Château. Inside the small, now famously renovated church of Mary Magdalene, the walls themselves seem to whisper. Father Saunière left behind a bizarre and theatrical set of decorations, from a grim statue of a demon holding up the holy water stoup to a stained glass window depicting a scene where a child seems to be pointing directly at a hidden detail. But the most analyzed artifact of all is the so-called Night Stone, a grave slab he reportedly found during his renovations. It depicts a knight on horseback, but the imagery is unusual, with a small, childlike figure and peculiar symbols that some believe form a coded message or even a crude map of the local terrain. Every element in that church, from the floor tiles to the placement of the statues, has been subjected to microscopic analysis by enthusiasts convinced that Saunière embedded the secret of his wealth into the deka for future generations to decode. This transforms the simple village church into a three-dimensional puzzle box where faith, art, and cryptic intention blur into one. But the heart of the code-breaking obsession remains the parchments. According to the legend, when Béranger Saunière discovered those mysterious documents in the altar pillar, they contained two genealogies from the 1700s and 1800s which seemed ordinary enough. But it was the other two, said to be medieval in origin, that ignited the fire. These were purported to be Latin texts, but with strange anomalies, extra letters, and odd phrasing that, when rearranged using various ciphers, allegedly revealed startling phrases. The most famous decoded message is the dramatic line, "To Dagobert Roman II king and to Sion belongs this treasure, and he is there dead." This single sentence, if genuine, would link the treasure directly to the Merovingian dynasty and the shadowy priory of Sion, a connection made famous decades later. So, are these parchments real? The consensus among serious historians and document experts is a resounding no. Analysis suggests the Latin is clumsy, the parchment aging inconsistent, and the whole affair bears the hallmarks of a clever, late 19th century forgery, possibly created by Saunière himself or an accomplice to fabricate a provenance for his sudden wealth. They were likely not a key to a medieval treasure but a prop in a personal confidence game. Yet, even knowing this, the allure of the code remains undiminished. Why? Because these ciphers and symbols represent the ultimate promise of the treasure hunt, that the secret is not lost but merely locked away, and that with enough patience and cleverness, an ordinary person can crack the code and unlock history. They speak directly to the puzzle solver in all of us, the part that believes every mystery has a logical solution waiting to be found. The real treasure of these cryptic clues, then, may not be the gold they supposedly point to, but the endless, engaging game of decryption they inspire, a game where the thrill is in the chase, not the capture. The mountain's silence is now being challenged by a quiet electronic hum. While legends speak of ghosts and coded stones, a new generation of seekers is turning to a different kind of magic, the precise, penetrating gaze of 21st century technology. They are no longer just scanning the ground with their eyes, but with pulses of energy and light, hoping that science can succeed where centuries of speculation have failed. At the forefront is ground-penetrating radar, or GPR. This device sends radio waves into the Earth, painting a picture of what lies beneath by measuring how the signals bounce back. It can reveal voids, changes in soil density, and buried structures without ever turning a shovel. teams have used GPR around the perimeter of Montségur, searching for signs of a hidden tunnel or a collapsed entrance that medieval defenders might have used for their escape. The results are often a mosaic of tantalizing anomalies, blips on a screen that could be a natural fissure, a forgotten medieval latrine, or the roof of a hidden chamber. Each one requires careful interpretation and often the difficult process of obtaining permits for a more invasive look. Then there is LiDAR, light detection and ranging. This technology is revolutionizing archaeology, especially in dense, overgrown landscapes like the Pyrenean foothills. Mounted on a plane or a drone, a LiDAR scanner fires millions of laser pulses at the ground. It strips away the canopy of trees and brush digitally, revealing the bare shape of the earth beneath. In forests that have reclaimed the land for centuries, LiDAR can uncover the faint, ghostly outlines of long-lost paths, the foundations of abandoned farmsteads, or even the geometric shapes of man-made terraces and structures that are completely invisible from the ground. Researchers have used these scans to map entire valleys around known Cathar sites, looking for patterns of human activity that point to secret routes or hidden settlements that could have served as way stations for the treasure. Satellite imagery adds another layer to this high-tech survey. By analyzing spectral data, experts can detect subtle differences in vegetation health that might indicate something buried below, like old stonework affecting soil moisture. They can create highly detailed elevation models, searching for unnatural alignments or formations in the remote highlands. One notable project, led by a consortium of French archaeologists and independent researchers, has been systematically cataloging the region using a combination of these tools. They are not hunting for a single chest, but building a comprehensive digital map of the medieval landscape, hoping to understand the logistical network that would have been available to the fleeing Cathars. This methodical approach represents a fundamental shift. The question is no longer just where could a treasure be hidden, but where could people have realistically moved, hidden, and survived in this brutal terrain under extreme duress. Yet for all its power, technology meets its match in the Pyrenees. The very limestone that forms the caves creates a nightmare for radar signals, scattering and absorbing them. Dense, ancient forests can defeat even LiDAR's ability to see the forest floor in certain conditions. And then there is the sheer, overwhelming scale. You can scan a mountain, but you cannot scan every mountain, every valley, every cave system across hundreds of square miles. The technology provides data, not answers, mountains of pixelated possibilities that still require a human to decide where to look next. So, will a drone one day fly over a remote ledge and spot the glint of a gold chalice? It seems unlikely. What is far more probable is that these tools will slowly, piece by piece, reconstruct the hidden geography of the Cathar resistance. They may find the cave that housed a community for a year, or the lost trail that connected two strongholds. They will find history layer by layer, and perhaps in doing so, they will narrow the search from an entire mountain range to a single, silent hollow where the past has waited, not for a knight or a priest, but for a gentle pulse of radio waves to finally tell its story. This magnetic pull we feel toward a lost fortune is far more than simple greed. It is a fundamental human drive, a psychological cocktail mixed from our deepest curiosities and fears. At its core, every treasure hunt is a historical detective story, but with higher stakes than any fictional mystery. You are not just solving a crime, you are solving the ultimate fate of a vanished world. The clues are not fingerprints on a glass, but weathered inscriptions on a stone, a strange alignment of ruins, or a cryptic line in an 800-year-old chronicle. Piecing them together makes you an active participant in the narrative, a partner across centuries with those who hid the secret. You become a detective in a cold case that has outlasted empires, and the thrill lies in the possibility that your unique perspective, your connection of two disparate facts, could be the one that finally cracks it open. A lost treasure also offers something rare in our digital, ephemeral age, a tangible connection to the past. It is not an abstract idea or a paragraph in a textbook. It is a physical object you could, in theory, hold in your hand. That potential touch bridges an unimaginable gap. To hold a Cathar coin would be to feel the same cold metal that passed between the hands of a perfecti on a mountain path. It collapses time, making history immediate and real. This object becomes a direct conduit to the lives, hopes, and tragedies of people long gone, granting them a substance and a reality that stories alone cannot provide. It transforms history from something we read about into something we might literally uncover. This leads to the irresistible power of the ultimate what-if scenario. The treasure legend is a story with a blank space in its final chapter. Our minds are wired to seek closure, to complete patterns. That empty space is an invitation to dream, to project our own solutions onto the mystery. What if it's still there, just beyond that next ridge? What if the key was in front of us all along? This open-ended question generates a perpetual state of potential, a low-grade, pleasurable anxiety that something wonderful is always just out of sight. It is the same mechanism that makes us wonder about life on other planets or the secrets of the deep ocean. The tantalizing possibility that the world still holds grand discoveries waiting for the persistent and the lucky. And we see this pattern reflected in treasure legends across the globe, each tapping into the same psychological wells. The lost mines of El Dorado promise a city of gold, speaking to our awe of vanished, majestic civilizations. The sunken galleons of the Spanish Main whisper of stormy seas and sudden disaster, connecting us to the peril and adventure of the Age of Sail. The missing amber room of Tsarskoye Selo is a story of war, looting, and the fragility of beauty in the face of chaos. While the specific details differ, the core allure is identical, a combination of historical romance, unsolved mystery, and the glittering promise of a physical prize. These stories persist because they are not really about wealth, they are about wonder. They allow us to believe, even for a moment, that the past is not entirely settled, that history still has secrets to yield, and that we, ordinary people, could be the ones to step into the story and change its ending. Our fascination with the Cathar treasure, then, is a mirror. It shows us our innate desire for discovery, our longing for a direct link to the epic narratives of history, and our enduring hope that some mysteries are still out there, waiting in the quiet of a mountain or the depth of a cave for the right seeker to finally bring them into the light. But for every believer drawn to the mountain, a skeptic stands in the archives. Mainstream historians examining the same events often arrive at a far less romantic conclusion. They argue that the legendary treasure is a beautiful fiction, a story woven centuries later from threads of tragedy and hope. Their case begins with a striking absence, a silence in the historical record where we would most expect to find a shout. Not a single contemporary document from the 13th century, neither from the Crusaders nor from the few surviving Cathar sympathizers, ever mentions a secret evacuation of gold or sacred objects from Montségur. Consider the context. The victors were meticulous in recording their spoils of war, listing captured lands, castles, and even the fates of important prisoners. If a vast material fortune had slipped through their fingers during a negotiated surrender, would they not have cried foul? Would not some chronicler have noted the outrage of the besieging lords, cheated of their rightful plunder? That profound silence is, for skeptics, deafening. Instead, the documents we do have paint a picture of grim, pragmatic reality. The fortress was under a tight blockade for months. Any wealth inside would have been desperately needed to pay for the food, weapons, and supplies that were smuggled in along those perilous mountain trails at great cost and risk. The most logical fate for the Cathar treasury was not preservation, but expenditure, coin by coin, to sustain the besieged community until the bitter end. After the surrender, standard medieval practice would have seen the remaining goods inventoried and divided among the victorious soldiers and their lords. The idea that a massive, untouched hoard could have been secretly moved past a watchful army, with no contemporary mention of its existence or loss, stretches historical probability to its breaking point. So what then were the defenders protecting during those 15 days? Historians suggest the true treasure was always the people, specifically the perfecti. Ensuring their escape or preparing them for martyrdom was the paramount spiritual concern. The faith itself, the living doctrine carried in their minds and hearts, was the sacred charge. And that treasure, tragically, was largely destroyed. The burning of over 200 perfecti in the field below Massacre was not just an execution, it was a deliberate act of cultural annihilation, an attempt to erase a competing truth from the earth by destroying its human vessels. The systematic hunt across Languedoc that followed aimed to extinguish every last ember of their belief. In this light, the later legends of hidden gold and secret scrolls can be seen as a powerful form of psychological solace. For the scattered descendants and sympathizers, the story that something pure survived the flames offered a thread of hope, a symbolic resistance against total erasure. The treasure myth became a metaphor for the unkillable idea, a way for a defeated people to whisper that their truth was merely hidden, not gone. This does not make the story any less meaningful, but it shifts its origin from history to the human heart's need for a better ending. It asks us to consider whether the most powerful treasures are those we can hold in our hands, or those we must hold in our memory, keeping a flame alive long after the last torch has been dashed to the ground. Even after 800 years, the mountain refuses to give a straight answer. The mystery of the Cathar treasure persists not because we have found nothing, but because the questions we are left with are more compelling than any simple answer could ever be. They are the unresolved chords at the end of a haunting song, the loose threads that keep us tugging at the fabric of the past. The first and most human of these questions is a matter of footsteps. Where did the escaping parfaits, those few who slipped from Massacre's shadow, actually go? Did they vanish into the deep caves of the Sabars, becoming permanent guardians of a secret vault? Or did they follow the high passes south, dispersing their sacred charge into Spain or Italy, where their knowledge could merge with other hidden streams of thought? Each path leads to a different version of the story, one where the treasure is still buried in a French hillside, or another where it was absorbed into the libraries of a distant monastery, its true origin forever forgotten. Without a single definitive account of their fate, every remote valley in the Pyrenees remains a potential final chapter. Then we must confront the word itself, a single term that has launched 1,000 searches. What exactly did the medieval chroniclers mean when they whispered about a treasure? Was it always a metaphor for the saved souls of the perfecti, the true treasure of their faith? Or was there a literal, material component from the very beginning, a community chest of gold and sacred objects that needed safeguarding? The ambiguity is the legend's greatest strength and its most frustrating obstacle. If it was purely spiritual, then the hunt is for a ghost, a legacy of ideas. If it was material, what form did it take? Common coin, sacred relics, or perhaps something more astonishing, like texts so revolutionary they threatened the medieval world order? The definition we choose determines the entire nature of the quest. This leads directly to the third great question, the puzzle box allure of a master clue. Is there a single piece of evidence yet to be properly deciphered that could point the way? We have the cryptic engravings at Blanchefort, the bizarre decorations in the Rennes-le-Château church, and the endless speculation over lost parchments. But are any of these genuine artifacts from the 13th century, or are they all later elaborations, forgeries, or simply unrelated markings onto which we have projected our desires? The hope for a codex, a map, or a cipher that neatly solves everything is powerful. It suggests the mystery is solvable, that the Cathars or their allies left behind a deliberate trail for the worthy to follow. Yet, the lack of a universally accepted key after so much scrutiny makes one wonder, if such a clue exists, are we even looking at it the right way? All of this speculation bumps against the brutal physics of time. Could anything possibly remain after 8 centuries of rain, root, and human activity? Organic materials like parchment or cloth would have long since dissolved in the damp caves. Metals might survive, but could a chest of gold and silver truly sit undisturbed through centuries of wars, revolutions, and the constant, quiet curiosity of local people? The land has been farmed, hunted, and explored for generations. It seems improbable that a large, obvious hoard could have evaded every chance discovery. This forces a final, poignant consideration. If we are searching for a physical object, perhaps we are not looking for a chest, but for a fragment, a single coin pressed into the mortar of a forgotten wall, or a solitary chalice hidden in plain sight within a remote church collection, its origin story erased. The passage of 800 years doesn't just hide things, it transforms them, scattering and dissolving a consolidated treasure into whispers and dust. These questions have no easy answers, and that is precisely why the legend endures. They keep the story alive in that fertile space between history and hope, where every new look at an old map, every scan of a familiar hillside, carries the thrilling possibility that this time the mountain might finally decide to speak. Perhaps the most profound treasure was never meant to be found in a cave. After centuries of speculation, high-tech scans, and countless footsteps on ancient trails, we might be looking for the wrong thing entirely. The true, unassailable legacy of the Cathars is not a chest of gold or a secret scroll, but the powerful story they left echoing through time. It is a narrative of peaceful resistance against overwhelming force, a quiet question mark etched against the idea of absolute power. Their existence challenged a monolithic authority, proving that even in the darkest ages, alternative ideas could take root and flourish, if only for a while. That spark of defiance, that memory of a different path, is a kind of historical treasure that no crusader could ever loot and no fire could ever consume. It invites us to look at history not as a fixed story written by the victors, but as a tapestry full of lost threads and forgotten colors, waiting for us to notice their absence. This mystery does something remarkable. It turns us all into explorers. The real reward may not lie in uncovering a hidden hoard, but in the journey of exploration itself. It is the reason you hike up to the windswept ruins of Montségur, not because you expect to find a coin in the gravel, but to stand in a place where people made a final, terrible choice for their beliefs. It is what draws you into the cool silence of a Pyrenean cave, to feel the weight of centuries in the still air and wonder who might have sought refuge there. This quest leads you through breathtaking landscapes and into the complex, often heartbreaking chapters of our shared past, fostering a deeper, more personal connection to history than any textbook ever could. The treasure, in the end, is the enduring question itself. It is the empty space on the map that compels us to learn, to travel, and to wonder. That unresolved mystery keeps the story alive, transforming a medieval tragedy into a living conversation between the past and the present. So whether the physical treasure is hidden, dispersed, or purely mythical, its greatest gift is undeniable. It reminds us that history is never truly finished, and that some stories are far too powerful to ever be completely erased. From the smoldering ashes of Montségur to the high-tech scans of modern explorers, this has been an epic journey through 8 centuries of mystery. We have followed a trail of whispers from the desperate escape of the Perfecti into the Pyrenean night, through the silent guardianship of local folklore, and into the grand conspiracies that linked this lost hoard to the Knights Templar and beyond. We have seen how a simple story of survival transformed into a legend powerful enough to inspire novels, fuel Nazi occultism, and launch countless expeditions into those ancient mountains. This entire saga hinges on one compelling duality. The treasure was both a tangible fortune of gold and sacred objects, and an intangible legacy of forbidden knowledge and unbroken faith. That very split reflects our own deepest desires, the human craving for both the solid proof of history and the transcendent thrill of an unsolved secret. We want to hold a piece of the past in our hands, yet we are equally drawn to the idea that some truths are too profound, too dangerous to ever be fully uncovered. So, where does this leave us? After all the searching, all the theories and technologies, the mountain keeps its silence, and maybe that is the point. Perhaps some secrets are meant to stay hidden, not to frustrate us, but to forever inspire wonder and remind us that history is never just a closed book. It is a living landscape, and every ruin, every cave, and every old story is an invitation to look closer, to ask one more question, and to feel that direct, thrilling connection to a world long gone. If this mystery has captured your imagination, we would love to hear your own theories in the comments below. What do you believe happened to the treasure of the pure ones? And if you ever find yourself wandering the haunting, beautiful landscapes of the Languedoc, look up at those stone fortresses silhouetted against the sky. Walk the quiet paths and listen. The wind in the Pyrenees still carries the echo of a secret, waiting for the next curious heart to hear it.